Thank you all for inviting me. I appreciate the opportunity. It's been another quiet year for your football team. It's been a while since I've had a chance to speak at the Commerce Club, and had an opportunity to do that shortly after we bought the club. It was announced in December of 2001, and we closed the transaction in February 2002. Time flies when you're having fun, and we've had a lot of fun, a lot of ups and downs along the way, but essentially it's been a lot of fun. In business, you look at 5 years as kind of a significant number. There's 5 years business plans and 5-year goals and 5 years performance standards, and so 5 years is kind of a significant time. So today, from my perspective, is really a very good occasion to go back and look at the first 5 years and talk about where the team is and where we're going, and talk about maybe lessons that I've learned, and then I'll be happy to take some questions at the end. 5 years ago, up here actually, I said there were three standards, three things we were trying to achieve for your football team. One was create a winning team on the field. Two was create a better game day experience off the field or actually during the game itself. And three was create a winning team off the field, a team that you'd be proud of in the community. And I think we've done reasonably well in all three of these areas. Last 2 seasons have been disappointing for us, but we did make the playoffs in 2002, my first year of ownership. And we did play in the championship game in Philadelphia in the year 2004. And we've clearly delivered a better game day experience to it. We've sold out 50 consecutive games. We have 22,000 people on the waiting list today for season's tickets. And we're in the process, we've made a commitment in the process of building out $30 million of dome improvements over the next 2 years to make sure that your stadium feels first class as we try to play first class brand of football in it. On top of that, we've put well over $2 million on a yearly basis, actually, into youth obesity through our Falcon fitness zones in the community. So we've done a variety of things to make that commitment off the field. I'm proud to say that your team, your athletes, have spent more time in the community, and this is all logged and documented, et cetera, than any other team in the National Football League. More player appearances, more times in hospitals, more times in schools, more times in nursing homes, more times in a variety of settings, and they do that on the one day off they have, which is on Tuesdays. So I'm encouraged by the progress, but I would tell you that the best part of it for me has been the journey. It's been a very emotional journey for me. 5 years ago, I thought it'd be fun to own a football team, and who wouldn't? I played football in high school, played baseball, ran some track, did some other things, and like most American folks say, yeah, it'd be great to own a professional team, particularly a football team. So we did this, and I've learned to, more than like it, I've learned to love it. I love the teamwork, I love the excitement, I love the competition, I love the drama, and I even love the parity. When we talk about drama, every game on Monday starts out, well, we have another game this coming Sunday. By the time we get to Friday afternoon, with the help of a lot of people in this room, that game becomes the most important game we've played probably in the history of the franchise. So it's every game has a drama, every game has a story to it. And our fall this year, our commissioner, Roger Goodell, new commissioner, came to visit us in Atlanta. He's spending a day with every single club and spent some time with the Georgia Authority Board as well. And I think his remark on parity really captured his viewpoint well. And what makes the NFL, and I'll read it, what makes the NFL unique and exciting is that every city at the outset of the season believes their team has a real chance to win a Super Bowl because they actually do. It's great to say it, but the proof is in the pudding. Proof's in the pudding this last year when 2 of the teams that played in the playoffs went from first to the top of their division. One was the Eagles, which is the NFC East, and the other is the Saints in our own division. Saints obviously coming out of that disaster, Katrina, last year, a team not having a home field really for the entire year, did an incredible job this year, and if it wasn't for the Falcons, I'm glad it was the Saints this year, or the Aints, I guess, as we call them here in Atlanta. So hope does spring eternal in the National Football League, and for me, what excites me most is what the NFL, and particularly your football team, does for the city, it does for the fans, it does for our community. And I say this with great humility and great sincerity, that it is an honor and it's also a responsibility to be part of Sunday afternoon. When you realize that people, there's 5 million people approximately live in Atlanta, slightly less than 10 million live in the state. A good number of those people, ones that come to the Dome on Sunday, 72,000 strong, give us close to 6 hours of their time from driveway to driveway, spending time at Falcons Landing, 3 hours and 10 minutes during the football game. We have folks all over the state give us, a lot of their time, 3 hours or better, to watch the game on TV, et cetera. So we understand that we have a commitment to this community and commitment to the fans that really support the team. I think more than any other professional sport, although I'm a huge baseball fan, love basketball, enjoy hockey as well, I think that football breeds out and produces the kind of intensity that you experience when you're at these games. So I think first lesson for me was that football is much more emotional than I could have predicted being an owner. Kind of as a lifelong fan, and I was a club seat owner in Atlanta for a number of years prior to us owning the team, I knew that emotions were strong. However, when we got on the inside of it, we realized the emotions are even stronger. The highs are higher, the lows are lower, and that's true whether you're an owner, you're a fan, you're a coach, or you're a player. But I never really did realize how much the city's self-esteem and sometimes sense of pride would rise or fall potentially with how the team is playing. And when we win, it's a great pride of civic pride. When we lose, everybody walks around, feeling badly and shoulders down, et cetera, et cetera. So we understand that responsibility, and we take that responsibility really very seriously. Obviously, the team's performance drives a great deal of the mood swings, and the media has a great effect on that as well. The media has the ability to either stoke the fires of passion or to put a blanket over them and to suppress them. So it brings me to lesson number 2. I think the media in football burns very brightly and very hot. I first learned that story through Robert Kraft, who's the owner of the Patriots. In December, when we announced our deal, the commissioner then was Paul Tagliabue, who recently retired after being commissioner for 17 years, asked me to come to New York to get some orientation from a league perspective, not a full day, just a half a day kind of deal. And he asked Bob Kraft to come down from New England to have breakfast with me. And at breakfast, Bob, just 2 of us were having breakfast, and he said, we talked about things that would be different and be similar between my experience at Home Depot for 23 years and owning a professional football team. And he said, people are going to tell you the NFL is real different. They're going to tell you running, a team in the NFL is real different. He said, what you're going to find out is that almost everything that made you successful in building your great company, the same values, the same principles, the same culture, you got to apply that exactly the same way in a national football team, and you're going to be successful. The one thing he said, and there's several other things I would say are different in addition to the one thing he said, looking back at the 5 years, one of the things is that when somebody broke their leg working at HD, they came to work the next day. When Michael Vick broke his leg in 2003, he didn't come to work for a very long period of time, made a real big difference. But the one major difference, he said, is going to be the media. And I said to Bob at that time, well, look at Bob. I said, Bernie and I started Home Depot back in '78, first stores in Atlanta in '79. When I left, we were the 3rd largest retailer, in the world, 2nd largest retailer in the United States, largest home improvement center company in the world, et cetera, New York Stock Exchange company, and what have you. And I said, we had a lot of media. I still remember this. He looked across the table at me. He just winked and smiled. It's like a father does with a son sometimes, or a mother does with a child, when they just can't, you're not going to get it, but you'll see it's going to be different. And it was, and in fact, I spoke to Bob just yesterday about another matter, and I told him I was going to speak to the press club today, and I said, I'm going to share that story because I often think about it, but he was really so true in that regard. And to me, that's not a bad thing. I mean, to me, that's a good thing. I think we want the coverage majority of the time, probably not all the time, but majority of the time we do. It's a big part of what stirs the fans' passions, whether it's winning or losing, or whether it's good or bad. And I think you can look just at this last season. I think the point was made when our previous coach, Jim Mora, went through his interview with the radio show in Seattle. And Hugh Millen, who was a roommate of his, actually played quarterback with Jimmy at the University of Washington. You all remember the final question that you asked him, and then try to kind of bail him out of the question, and that was, what would happen if he was ever offered a job up here, et cetera, et cetera. But the question before the question was to Jimmy, what have you learned in your first 3 years as a head coach in the National Football League? And Jimmy talked about the media. He said the media is just, the scrutiny of it, and it's so intense, and every move we make and every move that I'm making, et cetera. And so that was the first question. Then came the Washington question. And obviously the next 48 hours, Jimmy found out just how much scrutiny there was to every word he was saying. Another example is when we hired Coach Bobby Petrino. Our Bible says that God created the world in less than a week. 6 days did his work, and the seventh day was the Sabbath. It took us 8 days to hire a coach. But for the world of the media, that was not fast enough. So the Falcons did not announce that Bobby Petrino was hired. ESPN.com did. They announced it on a Sunday night at 9:20 in the evening, and our formal announcement, didn't come to 40 minutes later. What was most amazing about that is that if you went on Wikipedia, this was posted at the same time, prior to our announcement, it was in there that Bobby Petrino is the head coach of the Atlanta Falcons. So before we had reported it, rumor had become fact. And that's really fast in the world of media. But Bobby, talking about Bobby, I think he personifies the third lesson that I see that I've learned in the last 5 years in the NFL, and that's the huge commitment of time and sacrifice and commitment in a variety of ways it takes to winning. I'm going to read from, we did a whole bunch of research on all the coaching applicants we interviewed and spent time with. One was, this is from the piece on Bobby, it was done by a reporter in Louisville, and he said it best, I think, and I'll quote him. He said, "Don't believe the stories that he sleeps in his office during training camp. That's not true. Bobby Petrino doesn't sleep anywhere during training camp." So, Bobby does believe in a very strong work ethic. There are 2 F's in life that are important to him. His family is first and football is second, or sometimes football is first and his family is second. And that'll serve him well in the NFL. The days are long. It's a very intense business. The pace is incredible. And that includes everybody from the front office, through our coaching staff, through our players, through the folks that support our football team, our video folks, our equipment folks, our trainers, our medical staff. What you see most visibly are the players on Sundays. When they come off the field, and I often tell this to folks who say, gosh, they make so much money, and on average this year in the NFL, a player will make about $2 million a year, some more, some less than that. That's be the average this year, which is a lot of money. For those of you that have an opportunity to be down in the field with your press credentials, you'll understand what I'm saying. When I'm down there the last 4 or 5 minutes of the game, I see it and feel it. The intensity, the speed, the power, the volume of the game is unbelievable. And when you see these young men walk off the field, and particularly see in the locker room after the game with, broken this, bleeding this, blood all over their uniforms, spitting up blood, throwing up, whatever it may be, you realize what the word sacrifice and commitment really means in that sense. And that's true really not only with the Atlanta Falcons, it's true really throughout the National Football League. So I think every player, coaching staff, support person, front office person gives everything they have every single day of the week in the NFL. And that's what it takes to be a winner. It takes one organization, it takes a single team, it takes the same set of values. And I think those commitments are incredible. Fourth lesson I would say to you is that, and sometimes a challenging one for me, is that fans hold me accountable for the success of our team. We were talking about, the advantages of the ownership in the NFL over other sports in many cases, where it's required that a family or an individual be the principal owner. And Tom Johnson was making some comments in support of that at our luncheon a few minutes ago. But if something goes wrong, fans know where to find me. They know what the expectations I have, and that's really how it should be. This is their team. Sometimes people say, well, kind of you say that, but do you really mean that? But I really do mean it. I am the custodian of your football team. I understand I own it financially. I understand the difference between the two. I'm the guy that had to write the check for $545 million back in February of 2002. But I also understand that this is an asset of this community. There is one NFL team here. It is part of our community asset base. It's part of our civic pride. It's part of what we're about as a community. So I have to think often about what do the 5 million people who live in Greater Atlanta expect me to do? What do the 10 million people who live in the state expect me to do? They are our shareholders. They are our shareholders. So in that light, and I draw a very bright line between what an owner should do and what an owner should not do, I don't make roster decisions. I don't draft players. I don't free agent players. I don't negotiate contracts. I don't call plays. And I don't suit up, which is really a good idea. I did get injured this year, and I actually was on the injured reserve list. Orlando might remember that, and Furman might remember that. At the end of training camp this year, I was on the field, and you know, this is kind of a dumb story. I mean, it's a kind of embarrassing thing. When I've told the story, the commissioner, he thought it was really funny, and I've told the other owners, they think it was really funny, and our players kind of thought it was funny too. At the time, they didn't, but I saw two players started to have a fight, and it was right in front of me. And, you know, instinctively, as kind of a father, if you will, if you walk into a room and two of your children are fighting, and I got 6 kids, so there's always a chance somebody's going to be fighting in our house, that, you know, what you try to do is separate them and whatever. So I saw these 2 young men start a fight in front of me. My first instinct was to break up the fight, which was, you know, really a dumb thing, not very bright. These are 300-pound men, fully clothed, you know, all kinds of stuff on them, helmets, you know, pads of all measure and kind. And then I realized that this was not going to work out very well. I tried to get out of the way, got rolled over, tore my rotator cuff. 2 months later, had my shoulder operated on. So you do need to be careful about where you are in the football field. What I do is set the tone for your football club, both on and off the field, in terms of the kind of professionalism that we want, the kind of character we want, the kind of integrity we want, both in the locker room and throughout the organization. It's my responsibility to make investments in people, to hire the best people, to support them, to be their cheerleaders, to get out of the way then and make sure they have all the resources that they need to be very, very successful. It's also my responsibility to stay involved. You don't want an owner that has no face. You don't want an owner that has no identity. I think you do want an owner, you know my address, you know where I work, you know where I play, you know where I have fun, you know where I eat often, you see me around town, so you know you can get me. And I think you'll see throughout the NFL more owners are taking on more of that approach to being involved. Again, there is a bright line for where it's not a gray line. To my view, it's a very bright line as to where ownership should be involved and where it should not be involved. Part of that is driven by the financial investments that it takes today in the National Football League, not only in acquiring a club, but really running a club today. The new collective bargaining agreement signed last year is very complicated. The new revenue sharing rules are even more complex than they were before. FYI, about 50% of the revenue in the NFL is shared equally. 30% more is shared but not equally, and another 20% of it is not shared at all. You should know that, and this should make you feel good, is that this ownership and this football club has substantial skin in the game. We have led the National Football League in the years 2002 through 2005. Audited numbers, 2006 will be the same, in what's called cash over cap. And what that simply means is that we have expended more cash than any other team in the National Football League in terms of player costs. Our player cost this year will be $109 million, went up about $7 million from 2006. Most clubs, it's very important to them to develop this local source of revenue to deal with the issues of revenue sharing and deal with the ability to be competitive on the field. Our dome lease runs to the year 2020 or until the bonds are paid off. At the current pace, we anticipate the bonds being paid off 5 to maybe 6 years sooner than that. So stadium ownership for us is not a short-term alternative. And that's why we continue to work very closely with a very close partnership relationship with the Georgia World Congress Center Authority to find ways within the context of our lease and the construct of our lease to increase our revenue. Excuse me. That would be true for both the Falcons as well as the authority/state. We've put in place a number of game day enhancements over the last 5 years and allowed us to take our ticket prices, which when I bought the club in 2002, were 40% below the league average. They're currently about 5% below the league average. We're investing $30 million in the dome, as I said earlier, improving, redoing all of our suites, redoing all of our club seats, redoing all the signage, doubling the size of our scoreboards, exterior painting the building completely all over again. Brand new colors. In this case, it'll look much more like the Falcon colors instead of the Miami Dolphin colors. And we will continue to have discussions with the authority and others on long-term solution. And that may be sooner than a lot of people would anticipate. Today in the National Football League, traditionally, on average, it takes about 8 years to go through I want a new stadium until you have a new stadium. That's what Dallas just went through. That's what the Giants and Jets actually were longer than that. Almost every new stadium takes that long today, given the environmental issues, rezoning issues, sizing issues, design issues, just a lot of work that has to be done. So we have a great partner with the authority. I do want to really stress that. We believe that partnership will continue. But I'll assure you, the reality is that over time, is that we will, in order for us to continue to field a competitive team for you and for all of us, is that we will need some short-term revenue opportunities, continue to see those develop for us, and some long-term solution. One final lesson that I would just pass on to you is that we have an incredible opportunity, and I would say it's more than an opportunity. It's responsibility to expand and extend the Falcons brand to this community. And it's really irresponsible to not do that. And I call this, and I said this the first time I had an opportunity to speak to our players, and I said we're really competing every year for two Super Bowls. One is the Super Bowl that we think of in the traditional sense, the one that the Colts just won a couple of weeks ago, and the other is the Super Bowl of life. The Super Bowl of life is different. The other Super Bowl, we have to play lots of games, 11 guys across the field that are very well coached, great athletes. They want to win just as much as we want to win, etc. The Super Bowl of life, there's nobody across the line from us. We have the ability to connect the dots. We have the ability to become positive role models in this community and to make a difference in the lives of a lot of young folks primarily, but to really make a difference in lives in this community. The vast majority of our players, and this should make everybody in this room proud, have that passion. They remember their roots. They remember their families. They remember the communities they came from. They want to make a difference. Often they don't know how to make a difference. So through our Family Foundation, Atlanta Falcons Youth Foundation, and our staff up at Flowery Branch, we spend a lot of time in trying to help them connect the dots with their passion and work that needs to be done in this community. And we're proud of our coaches for being involved. We're proud of our spouses to be involved as well. 3 years, 3 years from now, the next 5 years, I would say, our three goals that we talked about 5 years ago and just a minute ago today are really going to be the same. And that is create a winning team on the field, create a better game day experience for our fans, and continue to create a winning team off the field and be a role model off the field as well. And that's still how we're going to define success. And it's easy to define success. You say, well, how do you get there? I take a little different approach in kind of explaining how we're going to get there. Obviously setting high standards and becoming the master of our craft, if you will, the master of everything that we do well. So I would define that definition of success in two words that would be a little unique, and that is a player. His name is Raymond Berry. And Raymond Berry was a great wide receiver for the Baltimore Colts, not the Colts that played in Indianapolis, from Indianapolis, but the Baltimore Colts. Although 50% of the time, I must say, I still call them the Baltimore Colts. During the glory years of the Colts, again, glory year now, 50s and 60s, a member of the Pro Football Hall of Fame. Furman probably remembers this, but Raymond was skinny. Raymond was slow. Raymond had one leg shorter than the other. Raymond couldn't see very well. He was drafted in the 20th round. Now we have 7 drafts in the NFL. I don't even know how many draft rounds they had there, but he was drafted in the 20th round of the National Football League. In college, he caught a total of 1 touchdown pass. 1 touchdown pass in college. You say, well, why was he drafted at all? It's a very good question. But Raymond Berry, what the Colts did see is they saw a young man who had believed in high standards, believed in improving himself, and getting on top of his craft, becoming the master of his craft. He had a 9-word statement of purpose, Raymond, and I'll read it. If you can touch it, you can catch it. And he backed it up in every sense of the word. He lacked the size, the speed, never lacked the commitment, always worked his fanny off. And by the time he retired, he caught more passes than anybody else in the history of the National Football League. What's even more amazing is that Raymond played 13 years in the NFL. During the 13-year period, he dropped the ball once. He had 1 fumble in 13 years. Stop and think about that. After his playing days, he became a receivers coach for the Dallas organization when Tom Landry was the coach there, and often players will come out and stay in shape the way they stay in shape, and we work out on machines. We go for a jog. They like to catch balls, throw balls, be on the field again. And Raymond would do that. He would go out and he would catch balls. And during training camp, and many years ago, Dallas would have their training camps in California, in the area of Western California. And he'd go out and he'd catch balls and catch balls and catch balls. And he did this one day, and then, he kept all the balls he was catching. He was slightly, over the bound marker. And so he went to the coach, to Tom Landry. He said, Coach, he said, this field is not right. And Tom Landry said, what do you mean it's not right? He said, the field's short. He said, no, it's not short. This is, NFL. It's our field. He said, but, they thought Raymond Berry, they ought to humor him, Hall of Fame player, great receiver, et cetera. So they humored him. They went out and got a tape measure. A pro football field, the width of a pro football field is 160 feet. The field measured 159 feet. So, that's a master of his craft. So Raymond believed if you can touch it, that you can catch it, and the Falcons are building toward a championship, and we can touch it, and we will catch it. We're committed to be the best. We're committed to be the best in our front office staff. We're committed because we have Pro Bowl players and outstanding players that are committed to everything we are in terms of chemistry and character and performance on the field. We have an exciting coach who's disciplined, creative, and we have some of the very best fans throughout the United States. We'll get there. Won't be easy. There'll be a lot of sacrifice along the way, but I promise you the next 5 years will be even more exciting than the last 5 years has been. Thank you very much for having me today. I appreciate it.
With what time remains, Arthur has agreed to take the team and being involved in committing funds. Just want to get your thoughts, what you thought about our other two teams where we have the Braves and the Hawks, which have ownership that's in turmoil in one. We have a corporate ownership on another. And both teams are really spending significantly under the cap and what they're allowed to do. What's your thoughts on that?
Well, I think with the Hawks and Thrashers, I think it's very difficult, and I think the Guerins are good friends, and the Seidel's are good friends, and I've met the folks in Washington. I know of Steve Belkin. I don't know him personally. I think it's very difficult when you have 10 partners in anything. It's real hard to do that. To give the team the kind of direction it needs. And now, obviously, the relationship becomes a fractured one. I think it's very difficult. My hope there is that situation, one way or another, and I don't have a horse to ride in this particular game, but gets resolved, because I think the ownership of both Hawks and Thrashers needs to be a single-minded, single-purpose, and single-statement kind of position. In terms of the Braves situation, it's no secret. We obviously had a tremendous interest in the Braves for a long time. The last conversation I had with Dick Parsons, which was probably back in the fall, when I understood this was not going to happen, and that the transaction was going to go to Liberty Media, if they could get the deal done and get it approved by MLB, which I think will happen. I told Dick and I told Phil Kent, who's a wonderful business leader here in Atlanta and a very good friend, that you know where I am. Here's my address, phone number, email, et cetera, and we're here. So I think that what's fortunate for the Braves in this case is that you've got, probably the best, Furman might have a different view on this, but Orlando might, or the sports editors might, but certainly one of the best combinations in the history of any professional sport on the field, and Bobby Cox and John Sherholtz. When you win 14 championships out of 15 years, albeit last year wasn't a wonderful year for them, you're doing a lot of things well. Terry McGurk provides them great leadership, I think, from a front office perspective. So I think that trio is going to be in place, and that, I think, will be part of the approval process for MLB as well. When Terry, and I read the article in the paper yesterday, when Terry says this will be a transparent transaction between Time Warner and Liberty Media, my hope is that it's not transparent. In my view, the financial commitment it's going to take to be competitive in baseball today, given the revenue increases that have been well documented throughout the league and are there, are going to continue to fuel and fund teams like the Mets and like the Phillies. Washington Nationals will get a new baseball stadium built. Their revenue sources, all three of those teams, will be up substantially. My view is that the Braves, over the long haul, are going to have to put more payroll dollars into their model to continue to be successful, even with the leadership, the great leadership they've had. So my hope is that Liberty Media will take a supportive, financially supportive role in this and give this team here the kind of resources that they need. The Braves shareholders are the same Falcon shareholders. They're people in this community. They're people throughout the state that support this team and love this team. So that's certainly my hope. Maria, you don't need a microphone. Or maybe somebody else. I'm sorry. Mark, there you go.
Yes. The last time the Super Bowl was held here, there was a winter storm. Because of that, the NFL seems
Right.
to have a bias about bringing the game back.
Yeah.
Can you comment on how or if you're going to overcome that bias?
Well, I'm hoping time will help us, and I'm hoping the experience like this last Sunday, Week-O Sunday, will help us as well. So when I got back to my room that night, I was in Miami for the game, and Gary Stokan, who chairs the Atlanta Sports Council for the Chamber, sent me an email, and his email was, well, how would you compare this to 72 degrees, warm, playing inside, and obviously I sent him back an email and said I wouldn't, and Atlanta is a great city. The decision is not made by the league; it's made by the ownership, and it's a secret ballot. It's the only secret ballot that exists in the NFL today, and I was assured when I went into the vote, Kim was involved in the process as well, that we had 32 votes and lined up in support of Atlanta. Fortunately, it didn't turn out that way. We ended up with a lot of votes and ended up taking it through four or five ballots, as I remember. But I think people, they love the Falcons. They love what we've done here. We've got great support from ownership and league senior staff. They appreciate everything I've talked about in terms of the experience of the franchise in the last 5 years. So I think at the right time, I think they'll come back, and be supportive again. They're very sensitive to the fact that this is it's not just a football game, which it's not. The festivities take place really over a whole week, a minimum over 3 to 4 days, and how the weather is for the fans and how the conditions are for the fans, I think, is not unimportant. It is important. Atlanta that Sunday was 51 degrees and clear, sunny, beautiful day. So I'm hoping that'll help over time.
I'm Dr. Sandra Buscelli. I'm the District Health Director for DeKalb County.
Yes, ma'am.
And I wanted to compliment you. We work with some of your Falcons players, especially Alan Rossick and D'Angelo Hall, with our obesity initiatives. And it's rare that we have athletes that really, they show up for the small things. It's not big camera, big media things. And obviously that's a testament to your leadership from the top down.
Well, it is, but it really is more a credit to them, and that's kind of the point I was trying to make remarks, is that most of these young men, and I would say almost without exception, at least in our locker room, and I would generally say around the NFL, there are some exceptions, but generally speaking, they do remember, their issues. They remember their family issues. They remember what they saw in their communities, and they do want to make a difference. Now, when they come to us, they're trained to play football. They're not trained to connect those dots. How do I give back? How do I get connected to the right institutions, the right agencies, to the ones where I can be in touch with young folks in a variety of ways? And so we help them really connect their hearts to the hearts of different agencies in the community, and we're happy to do that. We do tell them it's important. We do tell them they're role models, which they are. We do tell them their behavior on the field is terribly important. Their behavior off the field is terribly important. And we try to walk the talk in our own family and our extended family of coaches and players and spouses to do that as well. So.
I also want to know if those two players that ripped up your rotator cuff are still working.
Yes, they both are. Yeah, that was my fault, not theirs. Yeah, I was in a place I shouldn't have been.
Arthur, 5 years
Yes.
since you've owned the Falcons, can you share with us more what you've learned about dealing with the media and elaborate more about the relationship between working with the business press and the sports media?
Well, it's interesting. Patty Bond's here today, who used to cover HD when I was there, and I say this not because she's sounding my voice, but Patty, I think, did an outstanding job in covering Home Depot for many years. And but I wouldn't see Patty all that often. I mean, I would see her on occasion, quarter to quarter, unless she was doing a special story, unless we had an acquisition. et cetera. I remember one story she wanted to do on her family, and I couldn't find a time, so she came to a Braves game with me. We were talking about it earlier. She asked me about my middle son, Joshua. That time he was a little tiny fellow. Now he was 10 yesterday. So we did the interview watching a Braves game together. So I think, we had today up at Flower Branch in Orlando's here, and he would attest to that. In a normal day, we may have 3, 5, 7 reporters up there. If it's a national game, we may end up with 10, 15 reporters. If we have an issue of some kind, either good or bad going on up there, we could end up with God knows how many reporters. So, every word is listened to, everything's expressed, everything is looked at. And some people complain about that. I mean, with the leadership that we've provided, myself and Kim and Reggie Roberts and Rich McKay, I mean, we try to provide an open locker room. We try to provide an open environment, subject to competition and what have you. But we want to make ourselves available. When things are going well, we want to be available. My attitude, frankly, Maria, has always been is that when things are not going well, you want to become more available than when things are going well. And so when I say that, you have my address, you have my phone number, you have my email, you have all of that, Maria. Other people in this room have had it and used all of that from time to time, which is fine. I have no issue with that. And I think, ownership should be accountable, and ownership and senior people in organizations should be available to respond to questions.
Thank you, Arthur.
Okay. Thank you very much again. I appreciate you being here.